Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Londonderry Town Council meeting for today, February 22nd, 2022 at 7 p.m. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, let's remain standing for all those people who are in harm's way today in Europe. Pray for their safety. Thank you. Folks, as is our tradition, we start with public comment. If there is anyone who would like to address the council under public comment, now would be the time. Hi, Dan. Hi. Just name and address for the records, please.
Daniel Bouchard, O'Connell Drive, Londonderry. When we had the warrant hearings, I requested to see if we can get some information about how many empty positions we have on departments, for how long. I was wondering if we could get that information at some point.
Mike, can you look into that?
I'll email it to you this week.
Okay. My other thing is, it was brought to my attention anyway that part-time employees are getting health benefits. Is that for all part-time employees or?
No, I can answer that question. That is only for 3 part-time employees of the police department who are retirees and fall under the NHRS subsidy. So the town is only paying, in order to retain them for these special positions that we have them in as part-time employees, we're only paying the delta.
Okay.
No other part-time employees.
All right. I don't know why the other part-time employees wouldn't get it, just to be fair, but.
This was just, again, a special sidebar with the police union for these particular part-time positions at the police department.
Okay. I hear the council frequently say transparency, okay? A couple years ago, we had a position that was presented to the voters, and it was specifically said there'd be no medical benefits included in this position. It would be a truck, a trailer, four-wheeler that was bought, but there was specifically was told no medical benefits. I brought that up in a conversation where the chairman of the Budget Committee goes, yeah, I heard the same thing. And now we have this person that gets medical benefits. I just don't understand. If you tell the taxpayers, we're going to do this position, this is what we're going to have. And now that position is getting medical benefits.
I'm not aware of what position is or which employee is.
It's,
I'm careful not to talk about individual employees here in public because I believe they should have some privacy.
yep, I agree.
If something like that is actually happening,
Yep.
it's happening. The council, as far as I know, is not aware of it.
Okay.
If there was a sidebar done on a union contract, that generally doesn't come in front of us. So, but if that is happening and it is an issue, then we'll address it.
Okay, because I mean, when you come to the taxpayers and you make the presentation that this is how much this position is going to cost, this is what we got to outfit the position for. And it's asked, for benefits. No benefits because it's a retired person that's going to take it. They don't need the benefits, yada, yada. Okay, so we're not funding that. And all of a sudden, it's funded. So,
Yeah, I can't, obviously, I can't answer your question
Yep.
because this is the first I'm hearing of it. I
Yep.
think it's the first any of us are hearing of it. If it was the direction that we gave, then we need to address it.
okay. I hope that at some point it's going to come out how it came about and why it came about.
Well, the good news
Or it's
is
not-
if it's a sidebar to a union agreement, it's public record. So, yeah, that's fine.
But
I have
I
no
know
issue.
that when the position was first created, John, there was no medical benefits, and then
Yeah.
there was.
I think I can probably figure it out, but in difference, and I would do this in deference to any employee.
Yep.
I just, think that we owe everyone their privacy.
Yep, I understand that, but I'm just concerned as a taxpayer when something is presented to me, and because it was asked, why are you so opposed to Article 17? Okay, because I guess I've seen this happen a lot in town, through the years, and they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, recently, this position was funded, without medical benefits, now it is. Well, okay, so I think that the voters already spoke on Article 17 years ago, and I hope that they continue to preserve that as open space. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Make sure I get a copy of that.
Can I just ask a question of Mike on this subject?
Sure.
Okay. Hey, Mike, for the benefit of me and maybe some other people out here, maybe you could explain what is a sidebar, when does it happen, why does it happen, and how many of them do we have?
I can't answer how many we have. What I can tell you is, and I'll ask Lisa to jump in as well if I say anything that she disagrees with, it is an amendment to a contract, very basically. All of our collective bargaining agreements, I believe, are subject to sidebars at some point along the way. And that is typically done to address issues that were not anticipated between the parties at the time the CBA was negotiated. So scheduling issues, things that either were not or could not have been anticipated. And so to answer your question, that is what it is. It's an amendment to a collective bargaining agreement. I wouldn't say they're rare, but I also wouldn't say that they happen every month.
I would say maybe once a year, if that. Again, when a particular issue arises that needs to be addressed.
So, and what is the scope of these sidebars? What can they take in? Increases in someone getting paid, like he just said, for insurance, who wasn't getting insurance, and then the council doesn't get notified? Why?
So typically, I mean, to answer the question, they could take in or address really any topic that is the subject of or could be the subject of collective bargaining between a municipality and a workforce.
Okay.
If they are of significant enough magnitude, they would go before the council. But the way our charter works is, and it's not a clear line where operational turns into policy/council. That's the division. And so I would imagine that the town manager at the time made a judgment that if it did not come before the council, it was not of sufficient scope or magnitude to require that. I can tell you that I can't sit here and speak to that specific decision. I can look into it and provide you with information about it, and I will provide Mr. Bouchard with information about it. But that's how our charter works, and that's how sidebars work.
Okay, and is there a definition for significant magnitude?
No, there is no definition.
Because, I mean, it could be very small in your mind, but it could be very big in my mind if you
Right.
look at it cumulatively.
Well, I think in
And
fairness,
I'm just curious, I knew nothing about these things.
I think in fairness, in order for it to come in front of the policy board, a policy would have to change.
That's right. And it does sometimes happen that the town manager makes a judgment that even though it may not reach that bar as a technical legal matter, the potential ramifications are such, or it's of significant enough interest that it should come before the council so that they are aware of it and can weigh in if they want to. Again, there are no definitions here in the context of what we're discussing. It's a lot of this is a judgment call. I can tell you that in my experience, the former town manager did a good job of navigating that judgment call in my experience.
Yes, Tom.
One thing I just wanted to mention on this topic area is that we have a practice in this council, and for several years now, that before we add a headcount position, regardless of where it is in the town operation, we go to the voters first, and we put that on the warrant, and we ask their permission. That's a local practice. My experience now up at the State House that I've had recently is that nobody does that.
That's correct.
That people are astonished when I tell them that's how we run the town here. Say, oh my God, you tell the voters beforehand that you're gonna add new head count? Yeah, it's a very rare practice, and I think we should congratulate this council and other councils to do that. And maybe we're a little spoiled here, but I can tell you, and maybe Doug can tell you also, that's a rare practice.
And I, if I may, Mr. Chairman, completely agree with that. I would note that our charter is extraordinarily broad in terms of the powers that are given to the town council. And by practice, it's been my observation that the council doesn't use the full scope of its authority for that reason, wanting to hear from the voters, and kind of making that judgment call that the town manager has to make. Is this of significant enough importance to elevate it to the council? The council does the same thing when it comes to, is this of significant enough importance to elevate it to the voters?
Now, can you clarify something for me? So when you say new position, it's not like somebody got laid off and that position's being held for a year, 2 years, because that money is still in the budget until we take it out. This is adding on top of what we've already had. I just want to make sure that people understood that they're not saying, so
That's correct.
Joe Smo we got rid of the assessor, he passed away. That position is still kind of there.
Correct, except to the extent, so there are two things the council cannot do without the voters' approval. Approve a bond and approve a budget. And so to the extent there is a budgetary impact, you do need to go to the voters. But you could certainly, as you know, it's a bottom line budget, you could certainly add to headcount by reducing elsewhere without going to the voters. I'm talking what legally can be done. The council hasn't done this. I don't think the council's going to do this. But if we're having a theoretical discussion about the charter and what the council is able to do, that is the answer.
I just wanted people to understand, because sometimes they think when you say adding on, you're talking about existing people, but, okay.
To be clear, adding headcount. So we added SROs, we added police, we added public works, we added firefighters. It all went to the voters.
Right.
So, okay. All right, and we're still in public comment. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council? Yes, ma'am. Just name and address for our records, please.
Janet Houdelot, 5 Stony Point Drive. And it really means what it says, it's Stony Point. I just have a couple questions, so we're going over definitions. I was here last time, and they were talking about the assessors and the assessments and the abatement. So I have a fondness for the law. So I went poking around the DRA, the Department of Revenue Administration's regs, and I came up with a couple of questions.
Sure.
One is, along with Deb Paul's comment, it said that taxable and non-taxable land. What's non-taxable land? Church property? And I wondered, two parts to that, is that when they look at assess both taxable and non-taxable, do they throw the non-taxable in with the taxable to come up with their formula?
Would you like to address this yourself or Mr. Hamilton?
If Mr. Hamilton could bail me out on the answer to this question, I would be very grateful.
I'd be happy to. It's an excellent question. The law provides for exemption when the legislature creates an exemption in things like educational or religious or charitable properties are not taxable by their nature under the law, but we're required to establish a value for them so that everyone can see what the impact is of those legislatively granted exemptions.
Okay, are they in the budget? Are they, in the assessments? Is it part of the formula then?
So they're reflected in the total calculation, but then they're taken out as exempt property. So that when we have the summary report of values, it includes all of the taxable and exempt property. The only caveat is, and I don't think that we have this specific situation here in Londonderry, is if a property is owned by the federal government, then it is completely outside of the realm of taxation in New Hampshire for property taxes. But any other exempt property is listed, and then the exemption amount is shown.
Okay, you are correct. We no longer have that issue. We used to have property owned by the FAA, but we don't anymore.
You might not want to sit down, because I have my second question. Okay. And the second question was, when I first moved to town 22 years ago, 22 years in June, I thought I recall they did the assessment on like 90%, sometimes less, of your property. And now the language is for the highest value of the property or potential property. What does that mean, and why was there the change?
Mr. Chairman, it's a great question. The law requires that we establish value at its market value, not its highest price, but the most probable price that the property will bring. And so you may think of it as trying to measure the height of the ocean. We don't measure the tops of the waves of the ocean, nor do we measure the bottom of the wave. We try to figure out what's the most probable height of the ocean. So, and that has been the standard since long before you even arrived here. The standard has been market value, and that means full and true value.
Okay, but what about the potential part? Or it's the highest value or potential usage? What's that?
And I'm not sure what you're reading on the Department of
Okay.
Revenue's website,
Yeah.
but it is the market,
14
the
different
market value of the highest and best use. So the most productive, the most profitable use of the property. Most properties in their existing use are at their highest and best use. If you have a condominium unit or a residential dwelling, that's pretty obvious that it's the highest and best use. But if you have another property which is only marginally improved, but it could support an office building or a retail center, then its value may be something other than the current use of the property. It may be at some other use.
Okay, 'cause my mind went to, so see if this matches what you're thinking. So I own a house where they've started to build business buildings around it, and so now I'm there. So I'm going to be taxed at the value of the houses around me, not the houses, but the businesses around me, because obviously my acreage is eventually going to go to be business property.
So that's an interesting point for people who live in their property, which is now in a commercial or industrial zone. There is a provision of law that allows us to assess you as though you are in a residential location rather than at that higher. Because the legislature knew that that could be a problem. Through no fault of yours, the situation changes in your neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Steve.
Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question under public comment?
Eric Melanson, Jewel Court. I didn't think I was going to be speaking tonight, but just in listening to her speak, I do know that there are a number of condo associations within town. And on the town assessments in the past, they had a value assigned to them, whether it was, Parish Hills at $1 million worth of property plus improvements, or, one of the others with a lower value out there. And that they weren't taxed on the land, but they were taxed on the condos themselves. But now the land showing out there is showing a zero value, on the town. So it's gone from having an amount listed on the town to now having an amount of zero listed. I think that the taxes are the same because they're being paid by the individual holders, not by the condo association, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure of that either. So was there a reason, if we're showing the land values, as was just mentioned, for those non-taxed properties, why is the assessment showing zero?
I believe there was a change in the law not very long ago that changed the way that we did condominiums. I don't remember when it was. Steve, do you remember? There was something that changed in the way that they told us to do that.
So, and I think very specifically, you're referring to the condominium master cards for those properties that at some point may have held a value for them that was never reported into the MS1 or shown as an exempt value. It was an exempt land use code, but it wasn't reported as an exemption value because you're right, the value of all of that property is inherent in the value of all of the units, and it's dispersed among all of the unit owners. That there was a number there, we cleaned that up in this last revaluation to try and make sure that we didn't have any that showed any value, whether it was there as taxable or not.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else under public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. I have a motion to open a public hearing.
So moved.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Public hearing is open for Resolution 2022-02, the acceptance of unanticipated revenue pursuant to RSA 31:95B DES grant. Hi, Colleen.
Sure. So, Mr. Chair, members of the council, what you have before you is a request for authorization to authorize the acting town manager to sign paperwork associated with this grant. As you'll recall, we did complete a water resource management plan, I believe it was 2019 at this point, and that water resource management plan came up with a number of recommendations for tasks and projects the town can do to work on improving and identifying risks to our water resources and improving and trying to protect water quality. So one of those projects was a environmental risk assessment associated with septic systems. And basically, it's a three-part project that involves identifying what are certain risk factors and hazard areas that could make a septic system more likely to fail, and then creating a septic system inventory in town, an electronic database. Right now, those files largely exist in paper format, so what we'd be doing is creating a digitized files and a spreadsheet supporting that and database, so we'll know the age, location of those septic systems and flag the ones that have been identified as being in areas that are higher risk or potential to impact water resources nearby. And then finally, a public outreach component, which especially something that the Planning Board and Conservation Commission have long had concerns. A lot of times you have people moving to an area where now they're on a septic system. They've never had a septic system before. They don't understand what you can and can't put down the pipes, what the impact could be, how often you need to maintain these. So this is a project that we've applied to NHDES's Source Water Protection Grant Program, and they have awarded us a $12,865 grant to complete this project. We are going to be supplementing that with some funding from my department budget and our existing management services line to make sure that we can complete the project and come up with something that'll be effective. And we are going to be utilizing our summer intern this summer within our department budget. We always have had funding for a summer intern. The past couple of years, because of COVID, we haven't taken advantage of that. And so we are looking at bringing back our intern program this summer for a local college student who's hopefully interested in water resource protection issues to assist us with the project. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Tom?
Just as a hint, for those of you, as Colleen mentioned, that are not familiar with septic systems, you know that, well, we know from experience, you don't put down steak bones or anything that has heavy amounts of fat in it into a septic system. So put those in the green bucket instead.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that has a question? Seeing none, I will accept a motion to enter into and approve a grant with the DES in the amount of $12,865 to Londonderry and authorize the acting town manager, Mr. Michael Malaguti, to sign paperwork associated with such grant on behalf of the town.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So I have a piece, thank you, Colleen. So I have a piece up here that needs to be witnessed by a notary. Are you a notary?
I am. Thank you.
Just of note, it's 2/22/22.
Yeah.
I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative, public hearing is closed. New business, managing of energy emergency webinar discussion. Mr. Thomas. Just to be noted that Doug contacted me a couple of weeks ago, asked me if this could be placed on the agenda as a new item. It sounded interesting, so we're happy to hear.
Thank you. Doug Thomas, 143 Mammoth Road. Some slides are being passed around for our council members. Apologize, we're able to get slides to show on the screen, but this gives you some of the points that we would be discussing tonight. Not in detail, however, we don't want to be here all night. As a vice chair of the House Science, Technology, and Energy Committee, I witnessed a webinar last week. The reason why I'm coming before the council tonight is because I believe the webinar is important. And the reason why it was important is because it was because of a notice that ISO New England had issued a short while ago, a notice that ISO New England has never issued before. So it's important. This webinar is a little more than informational briefing and perhaps a step below panic, but it's something to call attention to a situation that is developing and is not going away. The issue is that in the very near future, this winter most likely excluded, very, very low risk of it happening, but certainly next winter and the winter after that, the risk increases that there will be planned power outages throughout the state called load shedding. That would be a last resort effort after conservation methods are being requested. And the reason why this is coming to light now is ISO New England, which is they control and manage the regional grid, which is called the New England Grid, which is comprised of 6 states, New Hampshire being one of them. And people should understand that what happens in one state affects all 6 states in reference to the grid. You know, whether you have a power generator in one state, it affects the entire grid if that power generator goes offline. Doesn't matter if one state is producing more than it needs. If the grid loses a power generator somewhere else and affects the grid, it affects the entire grid. And so what's happening is ISO New England, which I said before, manages the grid. They don't produce any generation, but they do control it. And so they do a projection, and they see a loss of generating power in the next several years, figures of somewhere around 7 gigawatts, I believe, or 7,000 kilowatts. And they look at the projections for what's coming online. And what they're seeing is a period of time where capacity may not be enough to provide power for an unusual cold winter where there's a spike. And the reason for this is our fuel situation. You know, back in 2000, we had a pretty good diverse mixture of fuel, gas, oil, coal, et cetera, nuclear power. Now, almost 20 years later, natural gas has become our dominant fuel source. Where it was 18% back in 2000, it's now 50% this year. And because of that, we rely heavily on it. And the pipelines cannot provide enough fuel, enough natural gas to provide what we need during the wintertime. Not because there's not enough gas. We have plenty of gas in this country, but there's not enough pipelines. And the pipelines that we do have were never meant to provide gas for power generation. They were primarily designed for distribution, local light commercial use, and things like that. So as we begin to shut down some of our power plants, and what's coming online is mainly renewables, there's a period of time where they may not be enough to handle extreme bouts of cold weather. So ISO New England has requested utilities to brief and provide information to the state and the towns on the plans of what could happen, when this happens. There'll be a period of time of some heightened awareness that if they believe that there might be a situation developing, there'll be a period of conservation requests and all the way up to an appeal by the governor to conserve the power you're using. If that fails, there will be an emergency declared, and at best, you may have 10 minutes before power begins to be shut off in various stages, not everyone at the same time, but there will be a step-by-step power cutoff for a short period of time. Now, with me, I have Eversource. I have Mr. Dave Cloutier, which is the Director of Systems Operations, with me that can explain some of those steps to you. And behind me, I have Allison McLean and Dave Carrier, who are part of the community relations team for this area here, if you have any questions for them. But I think the situation is important enough, and also in view of the fact that we now have a new energy task force, I think the town needs to be aware of what could happen and to gather the resources and to make plans, and people can make plans for not if, but when this happens, sometime in the future. Again, right now the risk is low, but it gets riskier every year as we progress. I'd like to turn it over now to Mr. Cloutier to explain just what would happen when an emergency is actually called.
Sure. Dave Cloutier, 15 Wendover Way in Bedford. As stated, we may get a call from ISO, hopefully several days in advance to prepare us for a shortage of energy and give people time to get prepared and start to think about conserving. But, when it came time to it, if we lost a pipeline feeding New England or a large generator, they would call us, and within 10 minutes, we'd have to turn off whatever amount of customers they told us to. So from our control center in Manchester, we can turn off right around 87% of the customers in New Hampshire within 10 minutes, right? So we could, if we got the call, turn off a large number of customers. We expect that the number at any one time is going to be much smaller. So if they were to order us to say, turn off 10% of your customers, right, that would be across New England. So every state's going to get that same order, turn off 10% of your customers. So that's kind of the first step, the load shed, where we turn people off. If they get notice that it's going to be a long duration event, hours or days, right, we're going to rotate through the customers in blocks so that not everyone's out at the same time. So if we get a 10% order, we can turn off 87% total. That's 8 to 9 groups that we're going to rotate through. So if that first group is on for 2 hours and we continue that 2-hour block, you could expect 16 hours or so later, we're going to be back to that first group of customers. We're going to rotate it around so that not any one customer is impacted more heavily than the next. The order that we turn customers off in, right, we put a lot of effort into making sure it makes sense, right? They're spread around the state so that you're not heavily impacting, one region of the state at any one time. We've also put hospitals and major load centers at the bottom so that they're not at least in that first group of customers. Same thing with power plants. We don't want to be turning off power plants if we need power. That's kind of the method. We do it all from Manchester in our control room and turn the next block off before we restore the first. Yes?
Thank you. A couple of questions. One, when you turn the power off, are you saying that the customer will experience a blackout or a brownout?
So good question. So prior to getting into load shed, we have what's called a voltage reduction. That's another conservation step. That's what's commonly referred to, right, as a brownout, where your voltage is lower, you may have part power. So that is a process we test twice a year. So we'll do that before load shed, but usually the customers don't notice. We actually implement it twice a year and, basically non-noticeable to the customer.
What will be the impact on things like refrigerator compressors and things like that don't operate very well at lower voltages?
Yeah, so what will happen is the voltage reduction is only a temporary measure. So the voltage goes lower, they run, but they don't get as much, juice out of the motors. So they'll cycle more often, and the effect of the voltage reduction goes away.
So there's no damage to the refrigerators?
No, there's still, when voltage is reduced, it's still within the allowed band that the PUC sets for us.
And the people that have automatic generators that turn on when the street power goes out, how will that be affected?
Well, so, this outage, to the customers, it's going to look like any outage they have during a storm, right? So they'll be at home, if they haven't been on the news and seen, the public appeals for conservation, their lights are going to go out just as if it's a windstorm, right? And then 2 hours later, or 3 or 4, whatever that rotation is, they're going to come back on. So, right, for the customer, it's going to be like any standard outage. They just, when they look outside, it might be a perfectly sunny day, just very cold. So they may not know the exact reason why it went out, but other than that, it'll be the same.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
If,
With regards to senior citizens or anyone that's on portable oxygen or oxygen that requires electricity, what kind of time frame do we get from you to make any type of adjustments that need to be made for people that need electricity to survive, oxygen and things like that? Is this a spur of the moment thing, or how much time do we have? And how does that announcement come out?
Well, it's going to be highly dependent on the scenario.
Okay.
If the new concern that ISO's brought up, right, it's the prolonged cold snap that they're concerned about. So,
Yep.
a single day in 0 or below weather should be able to handle just fine. It's that third and fourth day when the demand on everything is higher that it's going to become an issue. So, they do a 21-day look ahead as far as weather conditions.
Yeah.
So they're going to see that coming, right, and they're going to start contacting
Okay.
us, National Grid, the other utilities. Our Allison and her folks will start to get the word out to the communities.
Okay.
yeah, I was just going to say that Ms. McLean behind me could probably answer questions on how they intend to communicate and keep in touch. That's part of their job, to keep in touch. Also, part of the reason for the webinar and this briefing was to alert town officials and state and so forth that they really need to start planning for this to happen sometime in the not so distant future, such as reviewing your current plans of what happens when you have power outages, preparing to activate on a short notice, sharing the information amongst the customers within town here, or I should say the residents, making sure all the generators are working and operable for all the municipal buildings and critical functions. You want to be making sure the warming sites and the generators that could be used for them are all operational and ready to go at a moment's notice. And finally, a plan to do welfare checks for people that had been identified, just like you said, to make sure that they're safe. So these are all steps that the town normally would take anyway, preparing for a bad storm, but this is something that that could happen on a bright, sunny, cold day, no snow. So this is unprecedented by ISO New England to offer this notice, and so it's a question of not if but when it'll happen in the foreseeable future, because of what we have. We've taken a position here to go with a lot more renewables. We have pipelines haven't been built, hydro transmission lines haven't been built. And so ISO looks in the future to see what capacity we have or don't have, and they've issued this notice because they see a period of time when we could have this happen. I don't know if you have any more to add, Allison?
Mr. Chairman, may I approach?
Of course.
Allison McLean, Community Relations.
Thank you very much.
Allison McLean, Community Relations with Eversource. And with me today is David Creer, who is the point of contact for the town of Londonderry and Community Relations. I think the only thing I would add, because the representative has done an excellent job in explaining a very confusing situation, but this would be very different than a storm, although it would result in an outage. It's important that the town is preparing, and certainly anything that we can do from a team ahead to help the town, we're there to support. The things that will be different is that critical facilities such as your fire departments, police departments, they would be in part of these controlled outages, very different than a storm that creates outages. We isolate those critical facilities and try and get those on immediately. They are on a priority list, as long as with other facilities, but those would be included in this. We wouldn't have a way of being able to isolate those out. And it would be very different that you wouldn't see trucks rolling in town and you wouldn't see the restoration that's being happened. But in lieu of that, though, we would still be implementing our liaison organization, which some of you are probably familiar with, where we would augment our communication staff so that we would have somebody assigned directly to Londonderry to be supporting any questions or anything that we can do from our end of this, the controlled outage.
So you all are going to try to fill Liz LaRocca's shoes?
That's a very difficult job to do, as Mr. Creer is finding out, as he has taken on Elizabeth's.
Make sure you talk to him before he
Yes,
leaves.
but yes, it is a very big role to fill. But and we've tried to pull her out of retirement to be a liaison, and she's
But she's not gonna do
enjoying
that.
retirement.
No, she's smart. She's going to do.
She is.
Okay. All right. So, do you have anything before I start asking questions?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So are these only for cold weather? So they're not going to happen in the summer when we have extreme heat waves? Or are you saying, because I just heard you say cold, 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 cold.
Yeah, so they could happen any day of the year, depending on the generation that's going on in New England. The challenge with winter, even though, right, the overall consumption in the winter is much lower. Power usage is much lower in the middle of the winter than it is middle of summer. The issue is that home heating with natural gas uses up the majority of the natural gas supply. So in the summer, we have an overabundance of natural gas to fuel the power plants. In the winter, that home heating gets priority over the power plants. So it's becoming more likely in the winter, where in prior years it was more likely in the summer.
Okay,
If-
and go ahead.
If I can explain a little more, because it's something I just learned a few days ago, I should say learned it correctly. The pipelines we have here were not meant for power generation. The sizing and so forth was meant for light commercial use way back when they were first put in. So when we come to winter, everyone, and since we now have a 50% reliability on natural gas, most of the gas that can be fed through the pipelines is fed for heat. What's left over that the power plants, such as the one we have here in Londonderry, can get, not only is the price much higher because of the way that they do marketing on the competitive marketing system, but the supply just isn't there enough. And so it not only drives the price up, but heating goes first, and the pipes can only push through so much because of that's what they weren't designed to power plant, the gas plant originally. So it's because of the fuel situation, and that's why in the summertime we likely wouldn't have this problem because we don't have a heating problem. And so there's plenty of gas flowing through the pipelines to power the power plants that can produce more electricity to power the air conditioners when it gets very hot out. It's not that way in the wintertime. Is that
Yep, exactly.
So that's how I understand it, and it's all about supply and demand and the capacity and the size of our pipes and the fuel that we have here. And quite frankly, the only new power generations we have coming online in this area are all renewables, and we know that very little of the projects that are being projected actually get approved and actually get completed. So although you may hear that there's a lot out there, very few actually come to completion. And if they did, they're years away. Offshore wind, years away. Wind in itself can't power what we need here. So that's what ISO New England looks at when they look at what's coming online. And what they're seeing is potentially not enough to handle the high spikes.
Okay, so you mentioned a few things, but it all seem to be long-term for the fixes of these things. There is nothing, are you working on any other solutions besides renewables to remedy this problem?
Well, so,
Good.
no, I was just going to say, so, the challenge, right, as stated, is a regional problem, and we own the wires and the transformers, but not the generators. So it's really, ISO New England has, this message is.
Well, I just keep hearing that it's the pipes. So whose property is the pipes, and why aren't they putting in bigger and better pipes
So perhaps.
as a quicker turnaround?
we-
That's why I'm
we-
confused.
Maybe it will lend some clarity to that.
Yeah, the answer to your question is, it's been tried and it was shot down. The public shot down new pipelines, and the public shot down Northern Pass. Those are just a couple of small examples.
You can't-
But it's not really pertinent to what this here is, as a different situation.
So for the gentleman from Eversource, without getting into politics, please, no politics. The Quebec Hydro project that was going to come from Quebec down through New Hampshire was denied by the PUC, right?
Yeah, at some
So,
stage.
so
I
it
don't know
was
the exact stage.
proposed, and it has not been done. For whatever reasons it was done, there was a number of objections to it. So that's not happening. There was gas pipelines that were supposed to come across New York with Tennessee Valley, with Tennessee Gas. Those were also denied by the regulatory authorities.
Regulatory or voters, I don't know all the details on.
So to answer your question is that these were supposed to happen. And they were proposed, and by the authorities that would give the approvals, they said no.
Right, but those were for new ones. What about existing ones, expansion on those?
So to do an existing one, for example, the pipe that goes up through town and goes to the power plant,
Yep.
you'd have to either run another pipe or dig another one, and then you'd have to get regulatory approvals to do that. So everything has to come through regulatory
Okay,
approvals.
but do we know if that was even looked? I'm just thinking, like, it seems like everything is so long-term and there's no short-term fixes
totally get
whatsoever,
what you're
except
saying.
putting people in a uncomfortable
It's a-
and
it's a-
dangerous
It's a long
situation.
process to get all of the agencies to sign off on projects such as the pipeline. And again, when these ones were originally put in, they never envisioned the use that they're going through now. But it is a long process. In fact, I just heard today that FERC, who's, the federal agency that regulates interstate, pipelines and the what, has just made regulations much more difficult now to have pipelines approved. So it's a reality. We've chosen a course of action, and this is why we're saying we need to be prepared.
So knowing that we're a petroleum-driven economy, on October 25th, 2020, the price of a barrel of oil was $35.79. Today, it closed at $92.41. Cash price for oil at Rhymes and Hudson is $3.98 a gallon. So I guess the real question here is what the message you're delivering here is that because proper planning was not done, we are going to have to experience a hit to our economy
Yep,
because the planning was not done properly. That's the message I'm getting from tonight.
yep.
Is that correct? And I'm not asking Eversource to answer that. You can just, you've already answered the question because I've asked you. If it was up to Eversource, we would have built Quebec Hydro.
John, anything else?
Well, I would say that the course of action that the nation has taken, there is a segment of time that is leaving us a little more vulnerable than we would have been. And I thought you were going to ask a question about pricing, which wasn't part of this briefing, but I do have an article I'm trying to get published that speaks to the cost of electricity and will explain a little bit about what's going on right now. But yeah, it's the course of action that we've chosen to take is creating this hopefully temporary situation.
So no one has to be an expert in economics and supply and demand to understand that we're a logistics-driven, petroleum-driven economy, and things don't arrive to the shelf on their own. Renewable energies are nice. Electric cars are nice. Do you know it costs $11 worth of electricity to be able to charge your Tesla that goes 272 miles? But if you don't have any electricity, you can't charge your car. Sort of an interesting factoid. My major question here is, as the council sitting here in the town of Londonderry is, with all due respect, where's the state? Where's the legislation? Where's the governor? Where's the executive council? I understand we'll do what we need to do, and God forbid you take a hospital offline. When they're right in the middle of surgery, maybe. Now, I know they have backup generators, but you know what? they're all run by natural gas. And I'm not blaming Eversource, I'm not blaming you guys sitting here tonight, but shame on all of you, on all the people who didn't go ahead and protect the people of this community and the state. Because we've all seen this. And you said the right thing, Doug. They're putting deeper regulations on. We're going to be a petroleum-driven economy for many, many years to come. So that's mine. He was up first, and I'll come back.
I don't
Never got
disagree
to
with you, Mr.
finish.
Chairman. I think it's also worth noting that, and you guys probably know this number better than I do, but I don't think we have a new nuclear energy project. We haven't had one for 30 years in this country.
Well, that's correct, particularly in this area here. They're actually shutting down, although the one that's in Connecticut was going to shut down because of economics.
So my point is, as they fail to get approved and continue to get shut down, it's going to put more pressure on this problem than less.
Yes, yes.
Let Deb speak, please.
So what I wanted to say, you know, how are you guys going to compensate for your poor vision to the residents in the community and the municipals and the hospitals for your inability to foresee what was going to happen, considering your rates go up considerably, constantly, to people? So what are you going to do to make good on you shutting people down because you didn't foresee your company's expansion or need? What are you going to do? What are you going to offer these people? Are you going to give them a break on their bill because you had an inconvenience to them? I mean, I know when a restaurant is out of something and I've been inconvenienced, they give me a meal credit. Or if Comcast goes out and I can prove that it was their fault, I get a credit on my bill. What are you all going to plan to do for us, the people?
Counselor, if I may, there is a slight misinterpretation of what you just said. We have known for a long time of what the consequences could be.
And you did nothing.
Again, the nation and the state and the voters have taken a position of where they wanted to go. Policies have been introduced. The public, through their voices, justifiably through their voices, went to the PUC and convinced them not to approve certain projects that could have helped. The state took a position several years ago to divest itself of the utilities from power generators. So the utility companies here now have no pun intended, they have no power over power generators because they don't own them. The power generators are a separate entity now, and and what we have left in this state is one coal, one oil, gas plant, one nuclear plant. Thank goodness that's operating because it provides the most power for this area next to our gas plant. We have been met with opposite views, and we've said this could happen. But as far as I'll speak about legislation, we're a policymaking. We can pass policies. We've tried to encourage these projects in one way or another, but they have been shot down. And so the utilities, again, they can't generate because they don't own them anymore. So it's really, the public has to be made aware of where we are now and just take proper planning.
So this has been going on from Shaheen, Benson, Lynch, Hassan,
Poor
to Sununu,
management.
right? It's been going on since the 90s. And I'm not blaming Eversource. What I'm saying is that we're a Dillon Rule state. You guys, I don't mean you all or you Doug or you Tom, but the legislature sends us stuff and then and most of it's unfunded. Somebody up in Concord needs to get their act together and figure out what we're going to do next and how they're going to convince the voters of this state of what the crisis is. And if you guys aren't going to carry the ball, then somebody's going to have to. There's 2 United States senators that were governor and knew about this, right? There's an election coming. People need to start stepping up and doing something, right? Eversource brought a solution, Quebec Hydro, right? And the state said no.
Tennessee Gas.
Tennessee Gas, and the state said no. And other states said no. So welcome to California, because this is what you're gonna get. Is what they're rolling through and doing. So if the 400 people who are sitting up there in the state house and the 24 that are in the state senate and the 5 that are on the executive council and the governor can't do anything, maybe Londonderry will have to do something. It's a little silly at this point, don't you think? Thank you for coming here. Thank you for informing us. Thank you for getting us all worked up. I really appreciate it. I mean, how ridiculous is it that we're sitting here having this conversation? And Doug, thank you for contacting me and bringing this to our attention.
I agree, thank you.
Thanks.
Should have been done earlier.
All right, next item. Ordinance 2022-01, an organizational amendment to the Londonderry zoning ordinance, first reading. Okay, Colleen, you're still here. Can you basically tell me what this is about, please? Or tell the voters what this is about, please?
Sure, Mr. Council members, Mr. Chair, members of the council. This is, as it says, organizational amendment. It's really resolving some Scrivener's errors and typographical errors that were the result of the zoning overhaul that was completed in 2018. We've, in using the ordinance over the past couple of years, found that there are table references, section references that needed to be updated. So that's what this amendment is. So we are here for first read tonight, and we'd be holding the public hearing on March 21st.
Is O2, the, under public portable storage, is that some of the same or is that different?
O2 is different, portable storage is a little bit different.
Then we'll hold off on that one. I'll accept the motion to waive first reading.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. First reading is waived on 2201. 2202, Colleen.
Sure. So this amendment on portable storage, as the council will recall, they spent about a year updating, coming up with new language for portable storage containers. And now that the ZBA has been reviewing a number of special exception applications, the zoning administrator, Nick Codner, has identified just some concern and wants some clarity in the ordinance that would specifically state that the ZBA may approve the time or limit the length that a portable storage structure is on a property. It's already there in the ordinance, but this makes it very black and white that time is something that the ZBA can regulate.
Take a motion to waive first reading.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Colleen. Look forward to seeing you
See
for
you
the
March
public
21st.
hearings. Next item, MAC lease discussion. Mr. Malaguti.
Mr. Chairman, on December 29th, 2021, the town solicited public applications for an agricultural lease of 114 Pillsbury Road. Just so everybody's aware, this is the parcel that the town acquired from Max Apples in 2021. It's the orchard and vacant parcel adjacent to the town hall complex. Last year, Mac's successor, Andy Mac's successor, leased this property from the town without any kind of public process. And that was because, based on the consultations that we had, we felt it was important that there not be any interruption in the care and maintenance cycle that takes place every year out there in the orchards. For this coming season, however, we felt it was important to open this opportunity up to all applicants so that we have a transparent and a fair process that is open to all comers. Applications were accepted until January 31st, 2022. The town did receive 12 applications, including an application submitted by Max Apples. You have before you the applications as well as a matrix explaining the different applications that came in. I just want to draw your attention to one item that's highlighted. It's the second to last application that came in from Tiger Lily Terra Farming LLC. Initially, we had her showing with no experience growing apples. I wanted to make sure that the council is aware she does have experience growing apples. Many of the applicants are either good causes or propose exciting and innovative uses of that parcel, or both. And it's really a testament to not only the community in and around Londonderry, but also the state of agriculture in New Hampshire in 2022. That being said, we have a good problem. We have an overabundance of folks who, in a lot of different ways, could do great things with that parcel. However, the growing season is close at hand, and in terms of existing capacity and infrastructure in place in Londonderry or in very close proximity to Londonderry, in order to ramp up the maintenance operations that need to take place even at the end of this winter, my recommendation is that only Max Apples presently fits this bill. I've had informal discussions with Mr. Christensen's attorney. He's indicated that he's willing to lease the parcel from the town on the same conditions as last year. So that is a one-year lease for $1 of consideration on condition that he keep the orchard in good repair, and some other items that are not worthy of note at this point in time. I'm happy to answer questions on the lease if you should have any questions about it. So just to circle back, I recommend that you authorize me at this point in time to continue those discussions with Mr. Christensen's attorney, and to authorize me to enter into a lease arrangement on behalf of the town, substantially similar to the terms of the lease that were in place last year. I will also note that the Conservation Commission just addressed this issue at 6:30 this evening. They unanimously approved the same motion and recommended to you to proceed in the same fashion.
Questions?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll
Mike,
yield
you
to-
said
I'll yield to Jim.
substantially the same as the last agreement, so that isn't 100%. At one point, you say it's gonna be the same. I know what the same is, but now you're saying, well, maybe a little different. What's a little different?
It's my intention for it to be exactly the same, with, for instance, the dates changed,
so-
or, minor things like that, so that I don't have to come back to the council
Understood.
to get approval. But if there are substantive changes, yes, of course, I will come back to the council for
Thank you.
approval.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, but a statement. I did read through this, and I talked to a few of the local farmers, and they agreed that for the first year, it would be a good idea to have them continue using it. But I was thinking, if they're reading through this, there's a lot here, and personalities count, as we all know. Maybe next year, when they're not really busy and there's little windows of slow times, if each one of these person may come in and present to us what they'd like to do and how they see it and what the vision is and how they want to partner with us. So that not by just reading this, just like a resume, someone may look good on a resume and then you get to know them and they're not necessarily a good match for where we, the council or the community, would like to see that property go. So I don't know if that's a big ask or not.
No,
but-
absolutely. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, reading the applications, there are people here who I just want to meet, based
Right.
on their interesting applications and what they've done and what they propose to do. So
Agreed.
I take your point, and it's my intention to start this process much earlier next year.
Good.
These things always take longer than you think, but I think it is important to hear from and meet these people who might be interested.
Yeah, thank
Do
you.
you, Mr. Chairman, based on what Deb had said, do we, I think two important criteria to this would be experience with growing apples and your pesticides. So, to try to wean out and smooth things, I think that we should put a couple of those requirements in. Because someone, and don't get me wrong, someone that wants to plant vegetables, they still have to handle the trees, and there's a pesticide license that's involved in it. And if we go and we sign a permit for someone that doesn't have those, and they can't get them, then what happens?
Yeah, and that's the
I
basis.
just- yeah.
I agree. I mean, I agree that that's the basis for my recommendation this year, that we not, while I could, certainly see any number of these folks being able to do it. I know that Mr. Christensen can do it. And so that's why I'm making that recommendation on a one-year basis.
It's fine.
Anything further? I'll look for consensus to authorize the acting town manager to proceed.
Yes.
You good?
Yep,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
sorry.
All right, resolution 2022-03, the acceptance of unanticipated revenue pursuant to RSA 31:95-B opioid settlement funds. Hi, Justin.
Howdy. So last year, around March or April, we received the $3,480.62 from the opioid litigation. These funds have to be spent on opioid preventing and education of opioids. So through the article, you can see our recommendation is to partner with CHS, our current welfare provider, to continue what they're doing with the addiction and recovery aspect.
Questions?
Question?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Deb.
Oh, thank you, Jim. Can we broaden that search and maybe get people like the Upper Room or Center of Life Management that deals with people going through withdrawals of addictions and mental health issues, and same thing with Upper Room that deals with kids, young mothers who have dropped out of school trying to get their lives together, educational programs that they put out into the communities, along with the YMCA, that is actually really touching people who are addicted and who are living with people who are addicted as an option. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what HCA actually is doing with, I know it's not a lot of money, but it would be a lot to some of these other groups. And I know in those other groups, it would go directly to our citizens. So I just kind of was curious as to what they were doing and if you thought about using other, I'm sorry.
No, great question. So we looked at them because they're our current welfare provider. They have an outreach through social media and other aspects to try and inform the local residents of situations and opportunities for them.
Justin,
if
do you
I-
have to track this money? Yeah. Do you have to track this money?
We have to track that it went for this purpose, yes.
Mr. Chairman, real quick question. I think this is all well and good, but can this money be used to support our school resource officers to develop some programs in school
That would be better.
for drug?
It may be.
It
able
may
to.
be able to be used for that purpose.
Right.
And so, I mean, to answer the question, yes, we could, I mean, really, as a legal matter, the purpose of this, and I realize it contains language about the intended purpose. The purpose of this is to accept the unanticipated revenue. If the council wanted to accept the unanticipated revenue without specifying the purpose, with the understanding that we would work to identify any potentially other available options, I think we can do that.
Right.
Right,
As
I'm
long as
I'm
it's-
taking the with Greater Dairy Community Health Services, Inc. out of the resolution.
As long as it serves the opioid aspect, we can use it on certain things.
Well, it
The
says
school
interim-
resource officer,
interim
we
agreement.
we would just have to make sure that it is
Absolutely.
opioid-related, not marijuana-related, or something of that nature.
And I will bring it back to the council for input.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve an amendment to Resolution 2022-03 to remove with Greater Dairy Community Health Services, Inc.
You got it.
Yes.
The amount that we're gonna get is around $30,000, that we said, or 3,000?
3,500.
Yeah, $33,480.62 is what we have.
Tom, if I-
I'm in favor of the direction that we're going, but I have to tell you, I'm a little disappointed in the amount. When we were first briefed on this, there was anticipation that this was gonna be maybe 2 orders of magnitude larger than this.
Counselor Dolan, if I could interject for just a moment, this is just what we have on hand so far. There are several opioid-related litigation matters ongoing at the same time. They're settling at different rates with different distributors, different manufacturers, et cetera. This is just what we're hoping is sort of the first tranche, if you will.
Good information, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so I have an amendment. I'm looking for a motion to approve the amendment on the floor.
So moved?
Need a second?
Second?
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, so I've crossed it out. It's been amended in 2022-03. Are there any additional questions? I'll look for a motion to approve the amended Resolution 2022-03.
So moved?
Second?
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. We're approved. Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
Absolutely.
Old business, assessing update, Mr. Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton, how are our friends at Forest Hills?
Actually, they're very well, and they send their regards to you and to the rest of the council. I think they very much appreciated the fact that both myself and the acting town manager, I'm not sure how to address him at this point.
Mike.
Went out, Mike and I went out and met with the residents there, I believe it was on the 10th of February, and we had a very engaging discussion. It was not quite as lively as it was here the Monday before that, but it was a very good opportunity for me to make a very small presentation and allow, I'm going to say about an hour and a half for some really good questions and some assistance for them to help them fill out abatement applications. We didn't stop there at that point. Following up with that meeting, we sent out a mailer to every single resident there to offer an inspection of the units so that we can make sure that we have all of the descriptive information absolutely as lined up as we can on each of the units, because there are variations within these units, and we want to make sure that they're all appropriately weighted so that things like the age of some of the units and the depreciation that's appropriate to be applied is correct for each of the units. And so that was, my purpose was to just give you a very brief update on that meeting. The process is still underway. So far, we have 29 appointments for inspections beginning on Thursday afternoon. Most of them will occur next week on Monday and Tuesday, and then on the following week on Monday and Tuesday. The inspections are going to be completed by myself and two of my associates on staff of Whitney. It's not going to involve the town's employees or staff, and there is no additional charge for these inspections. This is just a natural part of the entire process. We're going to make sure that we verify all of the unit information that we can while we're out there. We do know that there are a few people who are lucky enough to be in Florida or South Carolina or some other place right now. And so when those individuals are back, we'll be offering the same opportunity for inspection to them. I did want to just give you a brief update on the total number of abatements that we've received. From Forest Hills is 28 abatement requests so far. There are a total of 57, including those Forest Hills abatement requests. And so I don't anticipate that we're going to be able to get 100% of those people to want to apply, but I think everybody who is interested understands the process and has ample opportunity to make the request with us. I think there was one other piece of information I think that you had requested about the informal hearing process that we had completed and asked how many informal hearings did we hold. And I can't remember which of you asked that really great question, but we did hold informal hearings for 148 properties in the late summer of last year. And among those, we had, I'm going to get it wrong if I don't look it up, we had about a third of those had a change in the assessed value and about 2/3 had no change. But I thought it was important to report that answer back to you.
You know, I think out of this process, we just want to make sure we're getting it right and that we're transparent and people understand the process. So thank you for that, yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure about the informal hearings, what that content was, but I'd be interested to know. But I think as a reflection on this whole issue here that we've had over the last few weeks, I think critically, the council should have anticipated better that this was going to be a problem. And I think we should have reached out to these segments of the population to kind of head this off at the pass and say, hey, this is going to be happening. You're probably going to be upset, and why don't we put our heads together and we explain it to you. I just think that's a missed opportunity, I think, to kind of head this off at the pass, and I think we should have anticipated that we were going to have some people very upset.
And, Mr. Chair,
I'm listening.
if I can answer,
Please do.
this is an opportunity, this is a learning opportunity for all of us, and every time that we approach these types of, these issues, we learn more. And it's always going to be hard to try and figure out which end of the curve is going to be the most impacted, but I agree with you, and I've integrated into my thinking for future-looking valuation efforts to make sure that we do reach out to the ones that will be most impacted.
Because I know him well, we've served together for a long time. If you had gone to the chairman, or if the town manager had gone to the chairman and said, hey, we got this issue that's going to blow up in our face, we better look into it and deal with it, I know that the chairman would have jumped right on that, and we would have had some hearings here in the chamber to take care of that, because I think the council was kind of caught off guard by this whole issue. But thank you. I think you're doing a great job, and I think my criticism here is more for the council, not for what you're doing.
And as I said, we're all learning together a little bit at a time, I think.
Let's face it, the market changed in a way that nobody imagined. Anyone else? So please keep us informed as these things continue to transpire, as things continue to change. I think obviously the market's going to change again now with the interest rates changing and with some of the other stuff I talked about earlier about our economy. So please do keep us informed how things move.
I think we want to strap ourselves in, but we'll have to wait and see what the market does and how quickly it does react to it. But
I'm not even going to try to venture a guess. I just know it's going to have some sort of activity that we're not going to expect.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
No, thank you all.
Okay. Approval of minutes. I'll accept an approval for the minutes of, as presented for February 7th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Mr. Moore, are you in the room? Hi, Mr. Moore, Christopher Moore. Sir, come on up. You're here tonight to interview for ZBA. So if you'd like to please take a seat here, and I believe we spoke briefly at the last meeting. I think I recall that. What I had promised is that if you would care to make an opening statement, we would start there. So I have Christopher Moore, 38 Oak Ridge Drive.
Yes. Council, thank you for seeing me. Basically, what I wanted to do was be appointed to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. I believe that I would be an excellent addition for it. I'm 24 years old now, but I've lived in Londonderry most of my life, went through the entire school system. Currently living in town, and I definitely wanted to get more involved. And I saw this as a great opportunity to get started in local government. I currently work as a financial advisor as well at St. Mary's Bank in town. And I definitely enjoy serving the community that I live and work in. So I look for your approval to add me as an alternate to the board.
Anyone who would like to start?
Go ahead, Tom.
Do you have any conflicts of interest that you can think of with your family or?
It would be difficult to foresee. The only conflicts of interest, I am a licensed financial advisor, so I do have securities licenses and specific insurance licenses as well. So if something for any reason would have a conflict due to the nature of who owns it, it could be, a firm or anything like that that owns public
So
stock.
you know
or
about
anything
the
like that.
process of recusing oneself if that?
I do understand, yes, the process of recusing, and I am prepared to do that if it does come to that.
Well,
So
one last thing is that's a very creative email address. I think that's give you a lot of credit for that. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else?
Do you have any idea in your mind as to what the ZBA does already? And have you familiarized yourself with the 5 points of law? Which is the hardest thing to do, is to stick to those 5 points. You so want to go off topic, but
I haven't familiarized myself yet with the 5 points of law, but I have attended a zoning board meeting right after actually I came to the last town council meeting.
Okay.
I've also spoken with their board and asked them questions after to ensure that I was familiar with what they do, the
Yeah.
differences between the ZBA and the planning board,
Yeah.
and really how they interpret and work with each other to make sure that they're not, just giving their opinion or anything like that, that it's based in facts and in the law.
well, good luck.
Thank you.
So, one, thank you. Please talk to your friends and tell them to get involved. I mean, we really want to see the people who want the community, we really think of this place as, someplace we need to protect. And we really want to see the people who live here, grew up here. Thank you for getting involved.
Well
Very
said.
much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Mr. Moore to the ZBA.
Well,
Second.
I would like to ask him one more
Oh, okay.
question.
I thought you were-
All right, I'm not going to tell anybody what your email address is, but how'd you come up with this?
Just, I'll tell anyone, it's 1,000 somebody. It's nothing weird.
Nothing
crazy.
Weird. I just thought it was really creative.
I was probably about 10 years old when I made that email, so
You.
I don't know the specifics around it actually anymore.
Good for you. I like that you stick with what you did. So, we
Mr.
have a
Chairman.
motion and a second on the floor.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, that is an alternate position that's open, is my understanding.
That is correct.
Yes.
Motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Yeah, Chris, go and see the town clerk and be sworn in.
Thank you.
Thank you for stepping up.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for staying and listening tonight. Can be- Okay. Do we have any liaison reports?
No?
Liaison reports? We're good on liaison reports. Town manager report.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Malaguti, I'm the acting town manager, and you have in front of you my first town manager's report for tonight's meeting. The format's a little different. It's a written town manager's report with some attachments. And so I think the only thing I would say is, I might not be as smart as some of the prior town managers that have served, but what I can tell you is that I do control how much information I provide to the council and to the public, and I have every intention, for so long as I'm serving as acting town manager, to keep you and the public updated. I'll tick through a couple of items here, and would encourage everybody in the public to access these materials. They're on the agenda section for tonight's meeting. I've during this past 2 weeks fielded a lot of questions about political signs. You'll see in the materials a message, a memorandum that I actually drafted as the prosecutor for the police department almost 2 years ago, addressing political signs. And I would encourage everybody to just check that out, because it talks about political signs both on state rights of way and on town rights of way, as well as on private and public property. Mr. Chairman, I did speak with a resident during the last 2 weeks who was trying to resurrect a discussion that I understand may have taken place before COVID-19 and sort of got tabled at that point in time, and that was around the veterans tax credits that we offer in town. We do offer 3 different tax credits at this point in time. One is the disabled veterans tax exemption. That's currently maxed out at $4,000. And then there are 2 other tax credits, the all veterans tax credit, that's a $500 tax credit right now, and an optional veterans tax credit, that's a $500 credit right now as well. Both of those credits could be raised by the council under current state law to $750. We're currently granting 900 all veterans exemptions and optional exemptions together for approximately $460,000 worth of veterans exemptions, excluding the disability exemptions that we do offer. We estimate that increasing both exemptions to $750 would cost north of $200,000. And so I wanted to, because the resident requested it, put it on the council's radar. And I will be reaching out to you to gauge your interest for doing something like that in the coming days.
Well, since the budget is set already, the finance director's going to need to come in and explain to us where the $200,000 is going to come from. 'cause
Absolutely.
Somebody's going to pay.
Correct. And by definition, a tax exemption or a tax credit spreads the tax burden to everybody else. And so we want to support our veterans. At the same time, we need to know what the consequence is going to be.
Correct. Yes, Tom.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to encourage the finance chairman, whatever you bring back to the council for recommendation, that you consider smaller increments, that we don't go to the maximum credit from where it is right now. Offer an opportunity to come up with smaller increments that would be less of a immediate impact to the taxes.
Mr. Chairman, one of the other matters that I want to keep on the council's radar is the work that the town staff is conducting with DOT to address the Route 28 and Stonehenge intersection. Not only is that a big issue during rush hour, it's also a really unsafe area. And so there are a couple of different alternatives that are being discussed. One is a signalized intersection. The other is a roundabout. You'll see minutes from the meeting that the town staff had with DOT in the materials. And this is just informational for you and for the public because there will be another meeting with the town staff before a public informational meeting sometime this spring. I'm sure there'll be a lot of folks who want to weigh in on that.
With regards to that intersection, it does require a certain set of skills to be able to take a left-hand turn out of there.
Exactly.
Let's just say a roundabout would require far greater skills.
That's right. And I think
For sure.
I think one of the reasons
I can't even imagine a roundabout over there.
it's hard for me to imagine as well.
Just a question, if you have other options that are on the table, would that wait for those public meetings? Or could they be suggested now? For example, if you had just a blinking light, and the coming down Stonehenge staggered the stops, the one taking the right would be further out, the one taking the left would be back a little bit, and widening the road, so coming north on Stonehenge towards on 28 towards exit 5, so that people can go around and you could sit there comfortably to take your turn. And having that blinking light would alert people that this is a heavily intersectioned place. I'm just trying to think if other options have been looked at, or was it immediately, here's a light, here's a rotary, these are big construction bills, these cost a lot of money. I don't know.
So to answer your question, I didn't hear any discussion of a blinking light or widening by themselves. In other words, without the signalized intersection or the roundabout. To further answer your question, yes, I think that we could certainly take that feedback back to DOT in the second meeting that we'll be having with them shortly and to find out the answer to your question.
Because we have that $500,000 still, and I think it was assigned to that area.
Correct.
So
Correct. It's actually more than that, is my understanding.
Okay, well, my memory's, you're younger than me. And it's going back years, but I do know that we got funds for it.
Yep.
So, as long as we can keep it so that we don't have to put more funds into it, and it still fixes the problem.
I'll make sure that we discuss those two ideas with DOT when we do meet with them.
When they were here, we did discuss with them that the height of the road and the leveling of the road is significant to the safety out there now. For example, the road is pitched towards the wetland. While I understand that, it also creates a problem in the winter, so that when someone tries to take a left, they'll wind up in the wetland. So if they could please resurface that from when we brought that up to them, that would be helpful.
It's a nasty area, and they were talking about that and recognizing that fact in our meeting. Mr. Chairman, Old Home Day planning is underway. 2022, it is the 300th anniversary of Londonderry this June. And so the plan is to incorporate that theme based on a suggestion that Councilor Paul made. I think it's a good suggestion into Old Home Day, and to see what the public is interested in terms of programming for that. Public meeting will take place on March 16th at 6 p.m. Encourage all members of the public, anybody who might want to participate in the planning to attend. And we recognize, of course, that not everybody who wants to participate can get there on the 16th. Reach out to us. We'll make sure that you're included going forward. Of course, March 8th, 2022, from 6 a.m. To no earlier than 6 p.m., the polls will be open at the Londonderry High School Gymnasium. The purpose is to elect officials and vote on the warrant articles. If anybody needs a copy of the warrant or any other information about the budget, just reach out and we'll be happy to get it to you. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, Mike Bennett, longtime Londonderry police officer, retired as a lieutenant and then served as the ACO, passed away on Saturday. Joined LPD in 1980 and retired, as I said, as a lieutenant in 2006. He was still there when I started in 2018 as the prosecutor for Londonderry Police Department. A lot of people over there are going to miss him, and I'd ask everybody to keep Mike and his family in their prayers this week.
Thank you. Yes, services are this Thursday, I believe.
On that annual report, I have a question. Why, we used to get the town annual reports done before the election, and I was just wondering, I know the school does it, why can't we? Because that would help with giving out people at the deliberative. If we had that, then they would have a copy of the warrants, they would have information prior to, and I think it would be helpful. So I throw it out there for a question.
I can certainly get you more information on that, Councilor Paul. My understanding is we were waiting for some of those pieces that go into that that were not within our control, but I can get you more information about that.
Thank you.
And the school doesn't put everything into it that we put into it. We put we have a report by groups. We have to finalize all of the articles and everything. They don't do all the same things we do. So they're just not as complete.
But I mean, we used to do it. We used to be able
do
to.
it for a town meeting. Then when we went to SB2, we couldn't get it done in time. Because town meeting, we brought the final articles to town meeting.
I know a few people have asked me, and I do remember getting them before the election, so.
And it was because we had an extra month. So, all right, so, so there's a meeting on our agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, Lisa.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add quickly that Leadership Londonderry is going to wrap up over the next couple months, the current class, and it's time to solicit applicants for the next class. So we will be putting out information this week on our website, the calendar, the application, that sort of thing, and it'll also be on the website, as your Facebook page and the website. So anybody that's interested, take a look, and we're going to have information over at the election as well, just for people to take if they're interested, just a one-page informational sheet. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, my fact checker, the finance director, just texted me and wanted me to make it clear that the polls close at 8.
Going to
Open up at
6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
So for the council, the polls open at 6 a.m. Joe, Deb, Tom, Jim, you need to be there at 10 minutes of 6. You have to sign to open the polls. You have to be there at 8 o'clock to close the polls. Y'all don't have to be there. I don't have to be there, but you do. I will be there anyway, because if someone doesn't make it on time, I can still open the polls. Please try to be there on time. 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., it's the school and the town that you're voting on. I have a council meeting that I'm going to leave on the calendar for March 7th. It's likely that we'll cancel that one and go with a council meeting for the 14th, since we have to by state law for an organizational meeting, and then a council meeting on the 28th of March, and then on the 4th of April, and the 18th of April. Kirby had asked me to see if I could run some dates out for her. I'll leave the one for the 7th in case there's something that comes up that we have to meet for, and we can always cancel that one. Anything further tonight? Accept a motion to adjourn?
So moved. And Mr. Chairman, please allow me to say thank you to the council and those in support of the council. If you don't have the meeting on the 7th, this will be my last meeting.
Well, with that, Mr. Dolan, 21 years on the council, I think you've done your service.
Certainly. And then some.
So that's a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes in the affirmative. We're adjourned. Thank you.